Supporters, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fabulous Lockheed Martin F-35 Pavilion and the 2016 Flying Scholarships for Disabled People presentation ceremony. This is the highlight of the year for the charity and a landmark day in the lives of our 2015 and 2016 scholars. Like many of you here, I know how learning to fly can both inspire and empower. That is why the charity was set up in 1983 by the late Paul Bowen and our vice patron Tim Prince, the driving forces behind the Royal International Air Tattoo. They wanted flying scholarships for disabled people to be a living memorial to the indomitable spirit of Group Captain Sir Douglas Bader, who, despite losing both legs in a flying accident, went on to become the legendary fighter pilot in the Second World War and a champion for the physically disabled. His outstanding example of courage and perseverance and his love of flying is the inspiration behind the charity. Before we meet the scholars, I'd like to hand you over to the chairman of FSDP, Keith Bayliss.
Your Royal Highness, Chief Marshal Pulford, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the Flying Scholarships for Disabled presentation 2016 on behalf of myself and my fellow trustees. We're using today the best marquee we've ever used. Thanks so much to Lockheed Martin for allowing us to share their wonderful facilities at Riyadh as they introduce the F-35 Lightning II to the British public. For a lot of people here today, this charity is already dear to your hearts, as it is to mine. For others, this may be the first time that you've attended. Simon has said a little bit about the history already. I wish to tell you a little bit more. Our aim with Flying Scholarships for Disabled People is to change lives through the medium of flight. We all have a love of aviation that binds us together, but we use this as a means of changing lives. It's the huge challenges faced by a disabled person and a flying course can be overcome. Then we realise that the scholar can then develop a belief in themselves that can lead to successes in their daily lives. We have many more applications for scholarships than places that we can afford. Every scholarship or every scholar that comes to see us, every candidate has a tale to tell. We run a pre-selection board. Applications close at the end of the year, every year, and we then run a pre-selection board and reduce the numbers to about 20 who are invited to the interview process at RAF Cranwell. This is where we settle on those candidates who we feel will benefit the most from a scholarship. We're not looking for the person we think will make the best pilot. We try to assess the scholar that we think will gain the most benefit. Before attending Cranwell, our candidates are all sent a flying training manual for some study prior to a quiz. Thank you to Dorothy Pooley for donating those manuals so that they can do that. When they all arrive at Cranwell the week before Easter, we're organised by Flight Lieutenant Sarah Darby, Corporal Kelly Mawson, without whose organising skills at Cranwell it just wouldn't happen. The trustees have other members of the selection board that come to help us. This year also interviewing with us were Lady Janet Bowen and Mel White. Thanks to them for joining the team. As part of the interview process that goes on for three days, we fly a PA-28 into RAF Cranwell for our scholars to practice getting in and out of to make sure that they can. And they are assessed in that progress in all weathers, out in the cold and the rain, by Mike Neal and Laurie Trusk. So thanks to them. At Cranwell, also as part of this marathon process that our scholars undergo, we run medicals with 3 aviation medical examiners led by our fellow trustee Eleanor Ivory, along with Drs Stuart Benzie, Liz Fox and physiotherapist Rachel Greenwood. We couldn't do what we do without all these people helping us. Successful candidates from this gruelling 3-day process are invited to a seminar where they're introduced to their flying instructors. This is done at Fairford. They're giving details of their course, and each are given a fantastic pilot starter kit, a huge bag of manuals, which is donated very kindly by Sebastian Pooley, so thanks Seb for those. The flying courses then take place throughout the summer. This year we're using 3 flying schools. Thanks are due here to our Vice President John Griffin at Griffon Aero Club at Kemble, to John Salisbury and Deborah Ford at Bristol Aero Club, also at Kemble, and our fellow trustee Fiona Luckhurst, Ray Proust, Nick Horton and Catherine Hutchings, and they operate at Shadow Aviation at Old Sarum. Each year we have this ceremony at Riyadh, and thanks here to our new Master of Ceremonies, Simon Harris. Thanks to our new photographer, sat down the front here, who you'll all see very shortly, Ian Bentley Willis, who likes to be known as Penguin. Katie Foote, who this year is interpreting, and she's over in the corner, busy working hard for us right now. The day wouldn't run smoothly without Pauline Gallagher, Steve Cairns and all the team of Air Traffic ATC cadets from the West of Scotland Wing 2496 Cumbernauld Squadron. I see you all the back. Thank you for all that you've done in helping organising us today. Again, like so many volunteers, we could not do this without you. Also assisting us throughout the year, regularly throughout the year, and here today, Francis and David Lawrence, together with Viv, Abby and Jess Case. Ladies and gents, none of this could happen at all without funding. This year we've funded 11 scholarships, which is a few less than last year. We have generous supporters and sponsors, but we're always looking for more. Were you to hear the stories that we hear at Cranwell, you would love to give a scholarship almost to every single applicant. Immense thanks to all our sponsors. And they are Lockheed Martin, British Airways, they have an in-house charity called High Flight. We have 2 scholarships every year from them. They continue to do so. Royal Air Force Charitable Trust this year have provided 3 scholarships for us. The Air Pilots Benevolent Fund, the Red Arrows Charitable Trust, the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight and the Battle of Britain Mini Flights, and individual sponsors John and Diana Davey, Carol Borderman, the Aviation Supper Club sponsor us, and also the RIAT Air Traffic Controllers. Any other person who has given us a donation, no matter how large, no matter how small, thank you. Every little bit helps. Nearly all of our income goes straight out into scholarships. My fellow trustees give their time and experience generously. 2 I've mentioned already, the support from others, Tricia Nelms, Group Captain Jeff Brindle, ex-scholar Ben Bennett, Air Commodore Ollie Delaney, Nigel Samuels, Group Captain Tony Cann and Andrew Smart. All their help is invaluable. Again, we could not do what we do without their work, their hard work and their attention to detail. We have a select group of vice patrons to promote and guide us. Thanks here to Sir Stephen Dalton, Bruce Dickinson, Polly Basher and to Tim Prince, who Simon has already mentioned. Also absolutely invaluable to us is the contribution made by our ex-scholars, who act as mentors at Cranwell, assist here. They help to raise our profile and raise funds, thanks to all of you. FSDP really could not run and would not run at all without the dedication, tireless commitment and organisational skills of our General Manager, Julie. Thank you, Julie. I've been regularly asked after the scholarship, what happens next? But a few years ago, the answer was probably nothing. In the past 12 months, we've begun the process of setting up a club for ex-scholars, families and friends of FSDP. We've held our first 2 fun days, attended by over 50 people each time. Each having a great get-together and some flying done too at those get-togethers. Plans are to hold several such events each year. Some candidates also succeeded in getting to Cranwell, but were assessed and maybe not as needy as some of the others and weren't awarded scholarships. Those candidates have all been offered a flying opportunity, and some are, despite not being awarded scholarships, are still very involved with the charity, and at least one I know is here today. So it's great that we're developing this little community. We're starting to develop the charity through social media, led by our trustee Andrew Smart. We've set up a Scholar Fund with the aim of our scholars becoming fundraisers themselves and sponsoring their own scholarship in the future. This has only been running for a couple of months. We've already raised £2,000, so we're well on the way towards a scholarship being raised by as the Scholar's Scholar. Ladies and gents, I'm about to hand you back to Simon for the presentation ceremony. You'll hear 2 of the scholars' stories in detail. There's a précis of the others in the booklet that you're all sitting on. There are many other stories out there waiting to be told. We need your help. Please give generously if you're able, help us to spread the word and empower us to change more lives through the medium of flight. Thank you.
As Keith said, FSDP has awarded 11 scholarships this year to be undertaken at Kemble and Old Sarum. The courses are residential and include ground school as well as time in the air. Can I at this point invite all the flying instructors to stand up so we can say a big thank you to them. Thank you very much. It is now my great pleasure to invite His Royal Highness and the Chief of the Air Staff to present the certificates to this year's scholars. We'll ask the scholars to come up in pairs. Their individual stories are all here in our scholars brochure. So let's begin with Celestine Hilelscu and Mark Colkett. Celestine and Mark will start their scholarship with Shadow Aviation this month. Celestine's scholarship is sponsored by Wings Around the World, a fund started by Polly Vasher, whose amazing 2 solo flights around the world raise not only awareness that the less abled can become pilots, but close to £500,000 for this charity. Mark is sponsored by British Airways High Flight, a charity largely funded by donations from BA employees. Now, Mark Tuskane and Derek Jote. Mark and Derek will join Shadow Aviation starting in September. Mark's scholarship is sponsored by an anonymous benefactor, and Derek's by John and Diana Davey, who are long-term supporters of FSDP. Adrian Walter and Peter Lowes start their scholarships tomorrow with Griffon Aero Club. Adrian has been awarded the Tim Prince Scholarship, which is sponsored by the Royal Air Force Charitable Trust, who have financed 3 scholars this year, all with an RAF connection. The Charitable Trust is the parent charity of the Royal International Air to 2. Peter is sponsored by Lockheed Martin, who are very kindly hosting us here today. Karen Cox and Stuart Campbell completed their scholarships only yesterday. Karen with Griffon Aero Club and Stuart with Bristol Aero Club, both at Kemble. Both Karen and Stuart's scholarships have been sponsored by the Royal Air Force Charitable Trust. Stuart's scholarship is in memory of Air Commodore David Bywater, who did so much for the Air to 2 and the Trust. Now, Howard Dupé, Lee Rowe and Claire White. They'll be doing their scholarship with Bristol Aero Club in September. Howard's scholarship is sponsored by British Airways High Flight. Lee's scholarship is sponsored by the Air Pilots Benevolent Fund, a charity which has been funding FSDP scholarships for many years. And Claire's is sponsored by the Red Arrows Charitable Trust, which receives donations collected at events attended by the Red Arrows, such as today's Royal International Air to 2. On behalf of everyone at FSDP, we wish you all luck with your training and hope it helps you reach for the sky. We look forward to seeing you all again next year to collect your wings. Now, before the presentation of wings to last year's scholars, I'd like to introduce one of them, Joe Kay.
Just before Christmas 1975, when I was 9 years old, I was diagnosed with a large and aggressive bone tumour which had started in my knee and had spread into my torso. The prognosis was poor. It looked like I wouldn't reach my 10th birthday, which was just a few months away. There was, however, a slim chance to save my life through a very rare and extreme type of amputation, followed by a year of chemotherapy. When I was told the news, I was shocked to the core, but also understood that I had to accept what was happening. I was extremely lucky to survive. Other children in the cancer ward had lost their lives, so I wanted to make every effort to live my life well. Growing up with this disability meant facing many challenges, and I did my best to deal with each hurdle. I went on to gain a degree in fine art and had a career as a programme maker with the BBC. I travelled around the world on my own and ran my own business as a fine artist. But it took a lot to do these things as an amputee, and being on crutches all the time, I was suffering from pain, fatigue and physical strain day in and day out, which jeopardised the freedom and opportunities I'd worked so hard at to retain. The thing I wanted was to find someone who could make me a prosthetic leg to combat many of the problems I was facing. Since childhood, I'd always battled away to get a good artificial limb, not just for me, but also for the other small numbers of people like me. But because of the rare and complex nature of the amputation, research into this area of prosthetics is mostly neglected. I realised after many years that trying to find a solution was completely wearing me down. I felt too defeated and didn't want to face any more disappointments over it. I knew that I needed to throw in the towel with this lifelong goal, and so I did. Around about the same time, I was at an air show. I've always loved aviation, and as I watched the planes overhead, I remembered something about a charity that gave disabled people the opportunity to learn to fly. That evening, I googled the relevant details, and up came FSDP. I was overjoyed to be shortlisted for the selection process at RAF Cranwell, and I'll always remember the phone call several days later to say I got the Carol Vorderman Scholarship, learning to fly in the Cotswold at Kemble Airfield with Carol's teacher Deborah. And when the time arrived to learn to fly, I spent 3 of the best weeks of my life relishing every moment of this totally absorbing adventure. I was incredibly fortunate to have Deborah as my flying instructor. She was so encouraging and wanted the best for me, gradually building up my confidence so that I could work harder and harder to get the most out of my flying hours, but also mindful that I have a disability, and if I got tired or in pain, she could help and accommodate me. And I absolutely loved the freedom of flying and seeing the world from the air, and I loved the wonderful feeling of accomplishment after each lesson. On the last day of my scholarship, Deborah said I was ready to do my first solo. I took a huge, deep breath and went for it. And what a powerful feeling it was to land upon the runway alone and take off into the sky to complete a circuit around this airfield which had become my home. When those wheels touched down on the runway, I don't think I've ever felt pride and happiness like it. Till the day I die, I'll never forget how I felt in that moment. Since then, people always want to know about my flying, and I can't wait to tell them. And I also can't seem to have a conversation with anyone without mentioning the words aeroplane or Kemble Airfield. I'd been given a gift to learn to fly, and it felt momentous. But the gift of flying also gave me another gift, which was that I'd been able to put my life into perspective. In the painful process of letting go of a lifelong, seemingly unreachable goal, FSDP came into my life and allowed me to experience the thrill of flying and a feeling of accomplishment, all without any battle. Sorry, last page, if I can find it. There. But to add to this story, recently, quite by chance and without looking for it, I read that the aerospace company Lockheed Martin is using its expertise to help develop a robotic leg specifically for people with my type of amputation. I never thought I'd really pick up the mantle again, but FSDP has sprinkled its magic once more. I feel the experience I've got as a pilot is a nice coincidental twist that gives me the strength to contact Lockheed about the research. I don't know where it will take me or even if it will work out, but what I do know is that FSDP created an amazing, life-changing episode for me when I needed it. And when I think about my scholarship, it always makes me happy. But maybe the most important thing I've gained from it all is when I feel really challenged with any part of my life as a disabled person, I repeat my new mantra, which is, if I can fly a plane on my own, I can surely do anything. So from my heart, I want to say to FSDP one very, very big thank you.
And I think it goes without saying that FSDP would like to say a very big thank you to Joe for sharing that with us. It now gives me great pleasure to invite His Royal Highness to present pilot's wings to the 2015 scholars who are here today. And we'll begin with Kevin Plowman and Paul Stairs. They both trained together at Shadow Aviation. Both Kevin and Paul's scholarships were sponsored by British Airways High Flight. Next, Ray Davis. Ray learnt to fly with Griffon Aero Club at Kemble. Ray's scholarship was sponsored by the Air Pilots Benevolent Fund. Bethany Coburn and Peter David were lucky enough to travel to San Diego to do their scholarship with American Aviation Academy. Both Bethany and Peter's scholarships were sponsored by an anonymous benefactor. George Adaway and Adam Lovegrove also learned to fly with Shadow Aviation. George's scholarship was sponsored by the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, which receives donations collected at events attended by the BBMF, like here today at RIAT. Adam's was sponsored by the Air Pilots Benevolent Fund. Joe Kay and Clive Osborne trained together at Bristol Aero Club. Joe's scholarship was sponsored by Carol Vorderman, who raised money for FSDP by appearing on the television quiz show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and Tipping Point. Clive's was sponsored by British Airways High Flight. And finally, Tim Clare and Savick Ray, who both learnt to fly with Airability at Blackbush. Tim's scholarship was sponsored by the Royal Air Force Charitable Trust. Savick's was sponsored by John and Diana Davey. Congratulations to all of our 2015 scholars. It really is fabulous to see you all here today and to share your pride as you receive your wings. Our final presentations today are 3 special awards. Each year, FSDP gives 2 special awards to scholars who we think gained the most from their flying training. So I'm very pleased to announce that the George Stewart Memorial Trophy is awarded to a man who's come such a long way since being awarded his scholarship last year. Not only has he recently qualified for his NPPL microlight licence, but he's taken on 2 challenges to raise funds for FSDP. This award goes to Paul Stairs. The Wings Around the World Salver is jointly awarded this year to two ladies who've not only gained in confidence since their training, but never hesitate to support and give back to the charity. The Wings Around the World Salver goes jointly to Bethany Coburn and Jo Kay. Our final special award is the Douglas Bader Trophy, awarded to the person who it is felt has contributed most to the charity, whether it's fundraising or helping to raise the profile of FSDP. This year, the trophy is awarded to a very special lady who's been involved with the charity for nearly 20 years. She was a member of the selection panel for a number of years and supported Vice President Polly Basher during her Wings Around the World challenge, a challenge which raised, as I said, more than £500,000 for FSDP. Not only that, she always takes time to visit the scholars during training and still keeps in touch with them, many of them on Facebook. This year, the Douglas Bader Trophy goes to Rosemary Taylor. Sadly, Rosemary is unable to be here to collect the trophy herself, so I'd like to ask Tricia Nelms to come up on her behalf. Your Royal Highness, Sir Andrew, thank you for taking time once again to be with us today. It is very much appreciated. Just before we finish, I'd like to read a little from Bethany Coburn's story, which you can see in full in the Scholars brochure. This is what Bethany told us. Throughout my life, I've always attempted to hide my disability. When I began my scholarship story, for the first time things were different. FSDP already believed in me. I had nothing to prove. This was a massive boost, and I felt that I had found an escape in my life where the pressures of my disability were removed, somewhere I was accepted and valued. This allowed me to see that disability isn't a barrier, and hearing other people's stories restored my hope that one day I too can be happy with a family of my own. When I began my flight training, I soon realised I wasn't going to achieve everything. I wanted to, and this hit me hard. It was a huge setback. I was extremely disappointed with myself, but was reminded that these expectations were not shared by FSDP. With their support, I overcame this hurdle. Before my scholarship, I had never accepted my cerebral palsy. Flying provided me with the opportunity to challenge myself and my disability. My setback made me realise that my cerebral palsy is a part of me. It slows me down, but it doesn't have to stop me. I just have to be patient and give myself time. This new positive approach to situations has changed my life and improved my well-being dramatically. I'm now happier with myself and with managing my limitations. Furthermore, as a result, I've secured a job I am delighted with, where I can continue to challenge myself and overcome perceived boundaries with time and patience. I've also bought myself a house, which will let me build on the independence I gained during my scholarship. Without my scholarship, I don't think I would have found the morale to pursue my chosen career. Thank you so much, FSDP. Thank you, Bethany. Before we finish, I'd just like to read you a few words from the person who provided and continues to provide the inspiration for this charity, Sir Douglas Bader. Don't listen to anyone who tells you that you can't do this or that. That's nonsense. Make up your mind you'll never use crutches or a stick, then have a go at everything. Go to school, join in all the games you can, go anywhere you want to. But never, Never let them persuade you that things are too difficult or impossible. Your Royal Highness, Chief of the Air Staff, supporters, sponsors, scholars, ladies and gentlemen, may I please invite you to join the scholars next door to toast their success. Thank you. But before we do that, it is a great pleasure to invite His Royal Highness to say a few words.
I'd like to say a few brief words without having to combat the noise that I think is going to bother us through this. Ladies and gentlemen, I think when you see the men and women that stand before you and see what they have managed to achieve and what impact it's had upon them and their view of how they define themselves, not how we define them or anybody else, you realize how life-changing it is. And it's that courage and the achievements that these people do that makes the support for this foundation so much more rewarding. And so they need your help. We need to reach out to more people. So please, wherever you can, in whatever way you can, please help support them, because it does change lives, and that's what we're all about. And with your support and with the support of the wonderful people that are here, and I see a number of our previous scholars that are in the back, it is a family, it is a unit, and there's so much more we can do. When they say the sky's the limit, well, the sky isn't the limit. We can go even beyond that. If we have that will and we have the willingness to change not just our lives but other people's lives for the better. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for celebrating these men and women here in what they have achieved and what they're going to achieve in the future. I think it's in a world that is very cynical and you see not many good news items, these are the good news items. These are people we can celebrate. These are real heroes, and I want you to recognize them for that and to join us in helping them on their journey. So thank you very much.
Your Royal Highness, thank you very much. And I'd also like to thank the Royal International Air Tattoo. For the first time in many years, we've managed to get to a ceremony with very little interruption from the fast jets. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the ceremony. Thank you very much for joining us.
all the 2015 and 16 scholars to the front, please, for a group photograph with the prince. As quick as you can.
Why you went to